Hey everyone, my name is Belle, and my parents and I have spent the entire quarantine in a self-made capsule. The thing was that I started to sneak out of this capsule at night. Unfortunately, my escapes were not a good idea and caused a lot of trouble. But first, I'll tell you a little about my family. The fact of the matter is that my parents are seriously paranoid. They can make a drama out of nothing. Once I caught the flu and had to stay for 2 weeks in my room, which my mother kept sterile. But that's not the worst part. As soon as I get hurt or prick myself, my father immediately takes me to the hospital for tests and all possible injections. My parents fear that I can have a septic fever due to a small wound. That is what life in our family is like. My parents see danger even in their own shadow, and I try to put up with their antics and don't pay much attention to them. However, everything changed dramatically when our world was hit by a new virus. When my parents heard this news, I thought that they would not be going further than house disinfection and self-isolation. But my parents exceeded all my expectations. It turned out that long ago, my father began to build a capsule in case of the end of the world or the spread of a dangerous disease. In a matter of days, he finished it and said that until the virus was defeated, we would live in this capsule, which was a small, round shelter. When I saw the capsule, I was shocked. It was very cramped, uncomfortable, and comfortless. There was no breathing space in it, and I compared it to a tin can. But my mother was delighted and said that this was a great house for the quarantine period. Aside from all the inconveniences, there was no internet in this capsule. My father said that we did not need it and that we could spend time together playing different board games. He also added that we would have to save a lot. So after 9 p.m., we were not allowed to use electrical appliances or water in any way. It seemed to me that I got into a prison cell, and on the third day, I wanted to escape. I could not be by myself, take a shower before bed, and read a book in the evening. Instead, I played terribly boring board games with my parents and dreamed that this quarantine would end faster. I didn't talk much with my parents because they talked only about this new virus all the time. So I used to write down all my thoughts and feelings in a personal diary, which I hid under my pillow. And one day I saw my mother sitting on the floor and reading it with tears in her eyes. I realized that she saw the last writing in which I called my parents crazy people. I did not apologize for my own opinion, only took the diary from her hands and blamed her for taking my item without permission. That was the last straw of my patience, because it was impossible to live in such conditions. As soon as my parents went to bed, I left the capsule without a doubt. Fortunately, my father left it in the backyard and did not transport it anywhere as he had originally wanted. So I got into the house easily, turned on my laptop, watched TV shows, and chatted with my friends all night. After that, I returned to the capsule early in the morning. This went on for several weeks. Because of the stress, my parents used strong sleeping pills, so I had enough time to stay at home with all the blessings of civilization and then return to the capsule. Sometimes I could even go to the convenience store across the street to buy some sweets. It seemed to me that things were finally getting better, until I got sick. Although I avoided panic, I still became very scared for my health, so I stopped my walks outside the capsule immediately. The weakness turned into a pain in the abdomen, and I could no longer keep my secret from my parents. I told them about my illness and how I ran out of the capsule at night. They were so scared that they almost lost their powers of speech. I was immediately forced to take various medicines from the medicine box. As it turned out later, I had mild poisoning because of the sweets that I used to buy in the store quite often. However, Dad was very angry because of my negligence and put a coded lock on the door so I would not run away anymore. But that was not the worst part. The situation in the capsule was becoming heated more and more after I told the whole truth. My parents were angry with me, and I tried to prove to them that quarantine was safe to wait within the walls of our house if all the precautions were taken. But they were adamant. Then I tried to tug on their heartstrings, saying that I was suffering a lot in the capsule, and because of this I felt bad. And I didn't lie. Because the eternal stuffiness in the capsule, I often felt dizzy and had tantrums at night that no one heard. Also, due to severe stress, my hair began to fall out, which caused the hysterics again. My parents didn't believe me, and the fights went on. We couldn't even go to different rooms to calm down, and this only made the situation worse. Moreover, my mother constantly reminded me of my writing about my crazy parents, condemning me for that. I spent several days hiding from my parents behind the curtains, thinking that we would never make up again. But what happened next made us unite. The fact was that for many years, my mother suffered from migraines because of severe stress, and at such a difficult time, the headaches became simply unbearable for her. Because of this, we ran out of the necessary medications very quickly. The new medications could only be bought from the chemist's shop. But even in such quite a tough situation, the fear of my parents ruined everything. Dad insisted that he could make medicinal decoctions on his own so as not to go outside. I didn't understand this. So in an outburst of emotions, I had a meltdown, trying to convince him to let me go for medicine, but my father was adamant. Only the next day he apologized to me and took me to the lock code. He also gave me some money for the pills. I found myself free again. You can't imagine my joy at that moment. I headed to the chemist shop and looked with envy at the families who were spending their quarantine in cozy houses. I was convinced that the main destination of our capsule was to soothe the fear of my parents. When I came back with medications, I tried to bring my parents to reason. Again, they didn't listen to me, but I did not want to give up. When I spoke about life outside the cabin once again, I noticed that my mother was thinking wistfully, with her eyes closed. Soon she took my side, saying that she could no longer stay here because she started to have migraines more often. However, Dad insisted on his way and forbade us to leave the capsule, changing the code on the lock. The fighting started again. My mother's condition worsened as the headaches became much stronger. She was enraged by the closed room. She often cried because she could not go outside and breathe fresh air to pacify the pain. The pills, as well as Dad's herbal decoctions, could not help her any longer. I was also going crazy in this tight capsule. Every day I hid behind my curtains and cried. I often shouted at my father that he got my mother and me with this paranoia. One day, noticing that my claustrophobia had started to develop, I freaked out and tried to break the window to escape, but I just couldn't do it because the glass was too strong. Seeing our suffering, Dad realized that he was guided only by the fear of the virus, and because of all this, his decisions were not justified. He apologized to us and said that we would return home immediately. Having got to the surface, we almost burst into tears of happiness. We were immediately noticed by the neighbors and announced shocking news. The quarantine ended a couple of weeks ago, so we didn't have to stay in the capsule for such a long time. Dad felt very ashamed of his paranoia. However, that was not the worst part. The door to the house was open, and when we went inside, we found that all the valuables were missing. While we were living in the capsule, our house was robbed. But the worst thing was that the robbery was most likely my fault, because I might have forgotten to lock the door when I used to come home secretly. When the police investigated at the house, they found that there were no signs of a break-in. My fears were confirmed, and I had to confess everything. Of course, my parents punished me. They also forced me to get a job so that I could help them to buy all the things that were stolen. Would you be able to spend the entire quarantine period in a small and tight capsule? Write your answers in the comments. Leave a like on the video and share it with your friends.